welcome back to another Payment Talk. I'm really excited to bring you another insight from across the channel today, and I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine and former colleague from WorldPay days, Nico Strauss, who is tribe leader for B2B services at Rabobank. Nico, that is a really cool job title, but what is a tribe leader?
Hi, Nick. Very good to be here. I guess it does come with a little bit of explanation. Rabo, in its digital transformation, is following along the lines of an agile way of working, and with that comes a bit of new job titling. So as a tribe lead here at Rabobank, we take care within our tribe B2B services of all the merchant-facing payment solutions, identity solutions, and the open banking development portal, sort of the repository for all our APIs and everything that goes above and beyond, the legally mandated APIs.
How far along that kind of journey is Rabo? So you've got these job titles. Are you well on your way to a kind of agile transformation?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's been an amazing amount of work done over the past 3 years. I joined Rabo now almost 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And these days, the majority of most of our key, sales and customer journeys, both in the consumer retail space as well as the merchant space, are majority completely digitalized. Okay. So we're actually quite far along. But our tribe B2B services has actually only existed for a little over a year. We celebrated our first birthday on May the 1st of 2020.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yes, of course, we still have a long ways to go, but we are starting to see some very good results, and the tribe itself is completely operational these days. And we're probably going within our little tribe even a little bit further than some other parts of Rabobank, insofar as that we're not strictly speaking a classical product tribe, but we blend support, product, and sales into one little semi-autonomous business unit.
Cool. So you've got a bit more flexibility to get stuff done. Now, you mentioned that you've got digital identity in your tribe, and I'm a huge proponent of the idea that identity is what kind of underpins a big chunk of payment experience. Now, the Dutch payment, the Dutch digital ecosystem has very strong digital identity. Why do you think that is? Why is there such a strong digital play in the identity space in the Dutch market?
I think, historically and culturally, this is always a space that the Dutch market is organized in quite well. The corollary, of course, being the payments industry. So as one of the first countries, I think back in 2004, we were already setting up for digital payments in a way that many other countries have really yet to start on.
And it's pretty widespread, right? I mean, people use the digital EIDAS compliant DigiD to do their tax and so on.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's different, let's call them ID methods for all intents and purposes. There's quite a few actually these days here in the Netherlands. You've got DigiD, which comes out of the Dutch government. You've got IDIN, which comes out of the Dutch banks and functions basically the same way as Ideal.
Yeah.
But instead of pushing a transaction, you're pushing certain identity factors. Yeah. And then you have what we call e-herkenning, which is basically the way that companies identify themselves towards tax, towards work societies, etc. And it's relatively speaking, in the compared maybe to the rest of the world, quite advanced already, but there is still a long way to go. And the Dutch government has recently, published papers around the fact that not just DigiD should be used, but other identity methods should have access to the market, similar to what the UK has done.
Okay.
And, we over here at Rabobank feel that that is a space that we need to be in.
I find it really interesting that there's a direct kind of identity play alongside, so you've got IDIN along Ideal, because I mean Ideal, as you say, was one of the very first digital push payments, pushing directly from consumers' bank accounts, and IDIN pushing credentials again. So the consumer very much in charge of what's going on there.
Yes, definitely, definitely. I mean, all across the lines of PSD2 as well. That everything needs to be mandated and controlled by the consumer itself.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the identity space, the banks in the Netherlands have their own method. But for the purposes of bringing identity services to merchants, we're not exclusive, right? So we don't really care out of our little tribe if it's DigiD, Erkenning, or IDIN. What matters is what the customer wants, right?
Yeah.
And giving them that power to select, be it on the merchant side or the consumer side, that's basically what you do. Now we don't have all the knowledge in house, so we partner actually, and we work with Signicat, who provide the majority of the platform itself in partnership with us.
Okay.
And they've just recently acquired one of the largest players here in the Netherlands, Connectis, to form basically the European hub for Signicat.
And iDEAL, I mean, obviously very strong, huge piece of the payments mix online in the Dutch market. Not so strong, well, barely available at all in the offline space. But I mean, do you see iDEAL being supplanted by something, like a more standard direct credit transfer across Europe, or do you see actually it's all it's comfortable in its eco niche and it'll just work nicely with the Berlin Group, or something similar?
Yeah. I think there's actually been quite a lot going on in the Dutch market with regards to payments over, specifically, the last 2-3 years. With iDEAL still, having the vast majority and still growing quite rapidly. I think the majority of that growth has actually been based for iDEAL on the emergence of what we call payment requests.
Yeah.
So people being able to push a payment request to somebody they had a few pints with in the pub.
Oh, like peer-to-peer?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That runs across the iDEAL network as it is right now. So they're billed as iDEAL transactions, but they function in a peer-to-peer manner, right?
Yeah.
And that's seen amazing growth here in the Netherlands. ABN AMRO, for instance, is in the market with something called Tikkie, but all the Dutch banks these days have similar functionality. So we're seeing that grow as well. Over a longer term, I think there is full realization that, if iDEAL remains purely a niche product, that's not going to be feasible for the very long term. Coming from the PSP space myself, of course, we were always looking at how you can do recurring transactions effectively via iDEAL.
Yeah.
Why do we not have things like an iDEAL checkout similar to what PayPal does? And, I think in future you will be seeing not so much innovation. That's too much of a bingo word these days, but I do think you'll see in the future that iDEAL starts moving as well.
And I mean, during our kind of current COVID crisis, there has been some kind of innovation in that iDEAL space, right? Being able to do physical payments, but using the iDEAL rails.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we're seeing this across the board, right? So in a transition from cash to more digital payments, more and more digital journeys are being used in the physical space. A funny example with a link to Rabobank, for instance, is that, in the Netherlands, outside of the main cities, you have quite some farmers that tend to sell produce by the side of the road. Yeah.
Yeah.
And where they used to just, ask people who drove by to leave some cash and take some produce, these days they can, have a static QR code by the side of the road that transacts via iDEAL.
Yeah.
And that's going live. Yeah, no, I mean, it's really old-fashioned commerce, but in a fairly new-fashioned way. And
but QR is really. I mean, I was always very skeptical about QR, but QR actually for socially distanced, physically proximate payments, QR is a great solution.
Yeah. So that's fully inside of iDEAL these days, right? So iDEAL QR payments are happening more and more, and what I can see in the data for our tribe, covering both online and offline, and being a very significant player in the offline space, we're seeing that shift happening at a much faster clip due to the corona crisis.
And I think it's one of those things where I think it's a change that was probably going to happen. Maybe not the QR stuff, but the shift to digital, I mean, is a trend that we've seen for a long time. But we're just kind of seeing this acceleration. And I mean, there will be some flow back, I think, when people can actually go and get back into shops and so on. But it feels like there has been a shift in the dynamics.
Yeah, and I mean, now you will have seen the graph from the U.S. Trade Department showing, penetration of e-com sales into total retail going from 6 to 16% in 10 years, and then going from 16 to 27 in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's an interesting time to be in payments. Nico,
yep.
Unbelievably, once again, we are out of time.
Okay.
Payments is an endlessly fascinating subject for people like me anyway. So 10 minutes goes past super fast. I really appreciate you coming along and talking with me today. Great to speak with you as ever.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. Bye-bye.